No, but it's super cool to have Morgan Eckroth here joining us today. US National Barista Champion.
Yep.
And a coffee celebrity.
Oh, you're giving me a lot of credit here.
You are. Don't sell yourself short.
Well, it's an honor to be here, so thanks for having me.
Yeah,
It's a great honor to have you here. It's a great honor to have you at the first Ally Open Summit. And we're excited to hear and share time with you and share knowledge and this opportunity that we have to really give back to a producing country like Brazil, and producers and the coffee community in general that will be attending this event. But that's another story.
Yeah.
That's why we're here first. But we could not be more stoked to be talking to you and just like pick some of your brain and some of the ideas, some of the things you have done in your career, which has been amazing to see the growth. I'm a big fan. I watch those videos you make all the time.
My silly little sketches.
They are so smart. And I'm like, man, I wish I was that smart, or I would have been smarter back in the days to do the same thing. So without further ado, Morgan, thank you so much for joining us at Rooted in Coffee. And let's have fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about, you're telling us a little about your story, how you started as a barista. Now you're at Onyx competing. I think a lot of our listeners would be interested in hearing how you went from barista to social media phenom, if I can't think of a better word, to now competing.
It's been a wild journey. So I started in coffee as a barista back when I was just turned 18. So it was back in spring of 2017, I believe. And I was in college. I was getting my marketing degree in Corvallis, Oregon at Oregon State University. And I kind of knew I wanted to be in coffee in some form. When I was in high school, I was like a camper at cafes. I would just load in all of my homework and
in high school.
I would just find a spot at the bar and be there for 4 hours. I was probably super annoying, but that was my go-to. So I kind of knew I wanted to work as a barista during college. Finally got the job freshman year. And it really clicked. I feel really lucky to have found what I was passionate about so early in my life. But I remember walking into my first shift behind the bar, and I felt like a superhero. I was like, it doesn't get better than this. And so that was kind of the beginning of it all. I was working kind of part-time to full-time, depending on the season, all through college. And then the first year I ever competed was actually the 2019 season of the US Barista Championships. I was lucky enough at the cafe I was working at. Both of the owners had competed a long time ago in previous years, so they were super supportive of me wanting to compete, and I just kind of threw myself in it. I'd been working as a barista for a year and a half, and I just didn't really have a ton of ideas about what I was doing, but I was like, I'm going to try this. It's competition in coffee. What more could I ask for? And so I managed to get to nationals that year, which was incredible for a first-time competitor. That was very cool. I squeaked in at 18, which in the qualifying rounds, 18 is the last spot that gets in. I got in by a technicality on the score sheet.
Okay.
That's
so
sweet. Well, it's sweet that you made it first year though, first try, right?
Yeah, first try.
Wow.
And that really ignited a secondary coffee spark. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. This is really interesting to me. So competed that year, went to nationals, and then starting in spring of 2019 is when I kind of jumped into content.
Okay.
I was finishing up my marketing degree, and I knew I wanted to be in marketing in coffee, something in the digital space. And so when I started making content, it was really just to kind of get practice with it. I had a photography background, but I didn't have any background in video. And I was like, what better way to kind of dip my toe into video than kind of starting to make videos? So I started doing sketches and coffee content just because that's where I was at the cafe all the time. And I didn't make them really for them to take off. It was just a lot of practice. And then they started to get more viewership and started to kind of build a following. And that's when I was like, oh, I was like, whoops, this is turning into something a little bit more serious.
And was this on TikTok?
This was on, this was on TikTok first. That's where I started out. And it was back when TikTok was embarrassing to have. I remember my friends would be like, oh, I saw you on my For You page. And I was like, don't tell me that. I was like, I don't want to know that you saw that. But yeah, that's where I started. And then I continued competing in the 2020 season of USBC. That was actually a year I didn't make it to nationals. It was my second year competing. I went in kind of feeling like a hot shot because I was like, I did this the first year. I can do it again. No.
Yeah, okay.
But at that point, I had the ball rolling with social media. So I was like, well, I'm going to compete again next time I can. I'm going to continue doing this. I like sharing with people and keep working as a barista. And so that's about when I started doing YouTube as well. And that was kind of a big thing of like taking it more seriously and making longer form content and diving more into like educational stuff rather than just like kind of humor, I suppose. And then the pandemic hit, which was a big thing. And I do accredit a lot of my kind of early success to really being right time, right place. Because I was starting to do like homebrew content right when all the cafes shut down, like everything closed down. And so it was a good time to be online talking about coffee. So I was doing that, continued growing all those channels, and then graduated into the pandemic, ended up eventually after kind of a few different steps deciding to do content full-time officially as a job. And then 2022 rolled around, and that was like the next, season of competition, because 2021 was a weird off year for everyone. And so that's when I connected with Onyx. I had been, it's such a funny story I've told a couple times, but I'd been friends with Lance Hedrick online. Like, we'd never met really in person, but we'd been friends online. And I found out I was competing exactly 2 months before competition. So it was it was a super tight, short timeline. And I had no idea who my roaster was going to be. I had no plans. I received the email and I was like, well, I have to find a coffee somehow. And it just so happened that the following weekend after that, Lance Hedrick was in Portland to do a training with a local cafe. And he was like, hey, do you want to grab coffee? You can actually meet in person, catch up. And so we grabbed coffee, and he was like, I see you're competing this year. Like, do you have, like, what's your plan? And I was like, I have none. there is no plan.
I don't even have my coffee yet.
I was like, I don't even have a coffee. And he was like, well, Onyx doesn't have a competitor in the running this year. Is this something you'd like to pursue? Like, we'd be interested in kind of sponsoring you in competition. And I, of course, tried to play it cool, but like I'm,
screaming in the back,
I'm like screaming inside. And so that's how that kind of began. And the 2022 season went very well. That was a really cool experience to come back and to win. Something I never thought would happen. And then it kind of exploded from there. I started working with Onyx on their marketing team afterwards. Then there was Worlds, and it's just kind of kept on going from there.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what is it about what you've done on social media or on digital platforms that has been different with what other people do or don't do? I mean, you have, I think, about 1 million followers across different platforms, right?
I've got 6.2 million on TikTok.
Okay.
Just a little bit more than 1 million.
No, I've got 6.2 on TikTok. I believe 1.2 on YouTube, and just under 1 million on Instagram, I believe, right now.
Well, congratulations, because it's not that easy to actually get that many.
It's a scary number.
It is.
Yeah, it's
Those
a really
are
big
huge
number.
Numbers, and
it's kind of wild to think about.
And
I can't wrap my head around it.
It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of people. A lot of viewers. When we were doing some of the promos for this event here in Brazil, and we were putting your reels out there, and every time your name was attached to it, it's like incredible. It's like 5-6 times more the views than we have for other good ones that we have, right? Yeah. So I think that, first of all, congratulations on that success. I think that your content is so engaging. It's like you want to watch it. And I now, knowing that your background is marketing, you studied it, and you really dedicate yourself to this. That started as an accident, right?
Yeah.
Never thought you're going to be exploding like this, but and going back to what Nick asked, what are you doing? What is your recipe? Because really, there's a lot of people with good content out there.
Yeah.
But Morgan has a recipe, and I'm not trying to steal it or anything like that. But I just want to.
No, I'm happy
hear from your mouth, why is yours so much more attractive in a sense to the the whole wide audience?
Sure. I mean, I've thought a lot about it, because for a long time I didn't really know. I was just kind of, I was just making things that I wanted to make, and I was always kind of shocked when people enjoyed watching them. It was that. I mean, still to this day, like I make things that I enjoy, and it's like it's an extra bonus that other people enjoy them. Like I think something that I've been pretty firm about through all of my content is trying to be as authentic to my coffee experience and my vision of coffee as possible, rather than. I mean, it's online. Like, social media nowadays is very, very algorithm driven, and it's very easy to fall into that kind of routine of chasing numbers or chasing trends or all of that stuff. And that's definitely that's a component of it. You have to be aware of those things. But I think what really helped me succeed early on, and what I've come to realize has been my strength in content, has been the more emotional side of coffee. Like, we all have these stories of like the first time we tried coffee, or the first time we had like, it's like the natural Ethiopian that kind of like blew your mind.
The
like
blueberries.
Yeah, the blueberry coffee. But we all have these like deep feelings and like shared, kind of memories in coffee.
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of done my best to tap into that side of coffee, less from like, it's kind of like with my strengths. I don't view myself as a super technical coffee professional. Like I'm interested in the storytelling and like the hospitality in coffee. And so I really leaned into that. And I think that kind of became my strength online.
That's, fantastic. I think when you love what you do as well, and you understand that people relate to the real things that drive your passion, I think they are attracted to that. As opposed to, we were talking about earlier on about scripted and all of this. We try to not.
Sure.
I know that for the content you're creating, you have to have some sort of a script, because you want to make sure that you're communicating the message for that specific content or topic really accurately, but in a way that is attractive, but is so simple that
feels
even a
organic.
child, exactly right,
Yeah.
even a child that is watching it feels good or understand exactly what you're saying. And I think sometimes people miss that simplicity is key to some of this. And I think you hit the nail on the head every time, because it's simple, it's informative, and is attractive, it's engaging. So, yes, more of it, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I feel when I watch your videos too. It's like they're fun, they're dynamic, but they also feel very real. Like real situations.
I mean, and that's been the goal all through it. I mean, I've been doing these kind of like sketches, like I call them, because YouTube's very technical. It's a lot of education, but the sketches are like where a lot of people know me from, and they're always like, "Are these real stories? Are you making them up?" And I'm like, I've worked as a barista for a long. Like, these are just real stories.
Exactly.
Like, it's sometimes they're like embellished a little bit for like kind of the dramatics, but like genuinely, these are just things we all experience, and I think it's just about kind of intentionally noticing them, and then I'm just doing my best to replay them essentially for people. And that's been kind of the key, is taking what's real and then replicating it in a way that people can see again.
Exactly right. And that also kind of helps people to, especially baristas that are walking into, their first shift or second shift, whatever, as first week, and then come across situations, such as the ones you present in your content. And like, okay, I've seen Morgan do this, so maybe I need to kind of like.
Oh, this is normal.
It is normal. Okay. And going into this, new career or point of entry into coffee as a barista, which I think that it's one of the best entry points for the coffee industry in general. I think that some of the most competent people we have on our industry, they started as a barista, and they have gone all the way to where they are now. We can name a bunch of them. But what would you say to that barista that is first, fresh, starting, to encourage them to, hey, it's this, keep going, like don't put your head down. If you were passionate about coffee, go for it. It's okay to have bad days, What would you challenge or also recommend or suggest them doing as they're fresh into this new career in coffee through, the bar and being a barista, right?
There's kind of two things. And I would say them to like myself as much as I would say them to like new baristas. I think that the two things that I really try to hold on to and that I try to pass on as much as I can to especially starting baristas is like the first one is like hold on to your passion for like as long as you can. I think
Amazing.
hospitality and specifically like customer service and front facing customer service is like it's hard. Like there are gonna be
Absolutely.
there's gonna be days where it's awful. Like I've had
Emotionally exhausting.
it's emotionally
Yeah,
exhausting.
yeah.
It can be like a terrible job if you let yourself sink into that. And I've certainly gone through those, like, you know, you go through kind of waves of where you really love it, and then there's dips where it's not that fun anymore. And I think being able to hold on to why you stepped into coffee or hospitality is very important for those lulls that you'll experience, because they're natural and they will happen. But being able to maintain a love for coffee outside of customer service, I think, is very important. The other thing, I just had this thought. I just lost it. The other thing I would always say is never be the smartest person in the room, and never assume that you're the smartest person.
Amazing.
I love that.
That's one of the things, especially in competition. Competition really humbles you to the fact that you will never know everything.
That's true.
Like you can be like a leader in one thing in coffee, but there's like a billion other things that you
So
know nothing
complex.
about. And so it's like being able to maintain curiosity, I think, is very important in coffee as well. And that will allow you to continue maintaining your passion as well. I think they go hand in hand.
Absolutely. You mentioned something about, having not so good days, which is fine.
Yeah.
But if the baristas, I think in my point of view, if the baristas understood that they have such a huge power to make somebody else's life better coming through that shop, I think sometimes, I walk into shops, I have this opportunity, this privilege to travel all over the world and visit coffee shops all over the world, and seeing baristas really not taking advantage to really make somebody else's life better. And you never know what that person is going through walking through the cafe and ordering a coffee.
Yep.
And if you treat them right, how that can be worth $1 million for that person that perhaps not having such a great day. So I'm sure you have seen a lot of things, but have you ever had this the opportunity, for example, of having someone that has had a really bad day, terrible day, walking into the shop, and you're like there and you're preparing a drink and having the opportunity to really present them a coffee that can really bring them some comfort, or change or put a little smile on their face, right? Have you encountered that situation before in a coffee shop, and how did you handle it?
Definitely. I mean, I think you see little versions of that like every single day you work bar. I mean, I think one of my most favorite like kind of customer interactions, honestly, is like people who are coming into a coffee shop for like the first time, and it's usually like it was like me when I was like a young teen. Like I remember going into a cafe for the first time and knowing that I wanted to be there, but I didn't know how to be there. I didn't know how to read the menu. I didn't know what the coffee drinks were. I didn't know any the etiquette, like all that kind of nuance that you kind of gain as an adult.
Yeah.
And I remember I felt really well treated by the baristas. Like they were patient with me. They explained things to me. They answered my questions. And I remember feeling so like welcomed by that. So now as a barista, when you see customers that maybe they're taking a little bit longer on the menu, maybe they have more questions that to you might seem obvious. Like it's remembering that it's never coming, rarely, maybe not never, but it's rarely coming from a place of like maliciousness. Like it's always, I think most interactions we have are very genuine. And I think being behind bar, it can be easy to kind of lose yourself in like the me versus them like kind of mentality, and just kind of remembering that we're all in this together, and that customer service is something that goes two ways.
Yes.
I think is something that's very important to remember and play out in all of your interactions. If that answers the question.
No, that
I feel
definitely
like
answers the question. And I think that if you are like in the hospitality industry and you're a customer facing, whatever it is your role, you always have an opportunity to really bring a smile to somebody's face. But also, if you're nice to people in hospitality, chances are that you're going to be more successful in what you do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've seen this in different shops where the baristas, they tend to be really nice and make sure that the customers are taken care of and the customers feel it. And they are tipped better because they're being nice. If you're, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name shops. It's a big name out there. So I remember going to this shop and then seeing in the menu coffee from a producer that I knew. And I was like, oh, I'm excited to try this coffee. It was a pour over bar. And I ordered this coffee. So I go in and I sit in the bar. And the barista is making the coffee. And literally, the barista is not even like paying attention on her brewing, not paying attention on me. I'm seeing right in front of her. She's just like brewing it like as fast as she could. And I knew the coffee was going to be it was a good coffee, right? So after she finished brewing the coffee, she hands over the coffee to me and I taste it and I'm like, wow, this is not what I was expecting, right? And I also wasn't expecting them to roll up the red carpet or nothing like that. Just like literally have like a good experience, right? This company has such a great name and fame, and I was like, I wanted to get coffee there, right?
Yeah.
Well, terrible experience. Then I come back the very next day because I wanted to make sure that was a
There's always a chance.
Exactly.
There's off days, like it happens. Yeah, we're human.
Right? So I go back the next day. It's a totally different crew. I ordered the same exact coffee. I go sit in the same exact spot on the bar, and I get probably one of the best experiences that I ever had from someone brewing coffee for me.
Yeah.
And the coffee, it was even better than what I knew about that coffee.
Yeah.
And the whole experience, the person was talking to me, was engaging to me, asking how my day was going, talking to me about the coffee. Literally, I felt that I was a judge in Brewers Cup, and they were actually engaging with me in that level. And I felt like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I came back again after having that experience. But the thing is that sometimes
You don't have
we
that.
don't have that.
opportunity.
We don't have that opportunity,
Yeah.
and we don't have that privilege, right? So it's good to know for the audience to know that bad days happen.
Yeah.
Baristas are not bad people. Baristas are people.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
people have bad days.
Yes, that's true.
Right? But it's always good. I think part of making baristas understand how much power they have is actually training.
Yeah.
And their training is fundamental to the whole experience from the customer side, right? On your experience, what are some of the best tips you can give to baristas? Perhaps not having the best day
Sure.
and coming into work and still having to do their shift. But maybe if you're seeing some of these things are triggering you,
Yeah.
here's my recommendation.
I think the most powerful thing you can do is put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like that, I think I kind of understood how to provide better customer service when I started going to more cafes. I think it goes both ways of understanding what you appreciate in good customer service, and then being able to kind of replicate that. I think another thing too is knowing when you need to kind of take yourself out of the position of being customer facing. Of if you are really genuinely having a bad day, being able to communicate with your team, with your managers, with whomever, to put yourself in a position where you can rest and recuperate, even if that's on bar, if that's wherever.
Right.
But being able to kind of take responsibility for your emotions and say, I need to take care of myself for a second and step back. Like it's a skill to be able to like recognize and do that, but it's a very, very important one, especially like with how fast paced and how just how much of a team you need to be in a cafe.
True. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it goes back to this theme about that I feel like we're always trying to overcome in specialty coffee. It's like making specialty coffee accessible to consumers. Like I feel like it's something that now I feel like the industry is more aware of, but before it was this constant challenge of like
why don't they get it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
It is.
exactly. And so I'm curious, like, what other, like, as a barista, what other, how can we kind of continue to help the barista, not just, obviously on the cost, encourage them to be hospitable and continue to be that kind of like consumer-facing, friendly face in the morning or in the afternoon. But what other ways can we like empower baristas through like training or like or education about coffee in general to make them also feel confident in that when the barista when the customer comes and wants to talk about coffee or wants to ask questions about the coffee, that they feel they've had the tools or the right knowledge to be able to.
And that's a great question. Just to complement what you're saying, do you think that the competition is a good platform for baristas
It's a
to
good
learn
question.
more?
Yeah, completely. Well, I'll touch on this a little bit from like a competition standpoint. I think my 2022 US routine is kind of an interesting launching pad for this question. First of all, I think competition is an awesome thing for one's education. Competition's an interesting thing, especially the barista and like brewers competition. There is a very real part of competition that is financially inaccessible. Like, to do well in competition, there are expectations and there is a level of financial investment that needs to be made,
True.
and it's a conversation that we talk about a lot. Like, it's tricky. But that being said, going into competition just from a standpoint of not winning, but just wanting to learn, like, you will push yourself so much further than you ever thought you would, just by making a barista routine. But then it comes to kind of a tricky point where it's like you have these super elaborate, super well thought out, delicious barista routines that are only experienced by like 4 sensory judges. And that's kind of it. And it's hard from like an audience perspective, or even a watching, like, maybe wannabe competitor perspective of like, this is really cool, but I have no idea what's going on that stage. And so in that way, it's very inaccessible as well. And so something that I did in 2022, which was interesting, I might change how I approached it if I ever did a routine like that again. But one of the core subject matters of that routine was talking about using the online space and like digital media to break down some of that wall in competition. And so how we did that was, prior to the actual competition, I was making like videos basically live of all my like preparation. Like I talked
That's
about,
pretty cool.
I shared what my coffee was going to be ahead of time, my milk recipe. I shared like everything. My routine was like online prior to
That's
competing.
really amazing.
And the very last kind of thing we did that really was supposed to kind of cap it off was I published my entire signature beverage recipe online. And we built the signature beverage in a way that was as accessible as possible to like kind of everyday consumers. So easy ingredients, easy preparation methods, like all those things. And so the idea of that routine was, ideally, if someone put in the effort, they could recreate what I was serving to the judges as close as possible and then experience it at home simultaneously to the judges. And so that was something that was interesting to do in a barista routine. Now, did it work? I don't really know. It's like how many people actually went and made those drinks.
Yeah.
But that was one of the goals, was to kind of share as much of that high level like competition knowledge as possible with folks who are in the industry or even not. And I think things like that are good.
Yes.
Overall. Like, I think being able to communicate competition and what we do in competition and why we do it in competition is very important. And I think it's a huge motivating factor for baristas. And I think the more utilization of social media to share the coffee knowledge that often just stays tightly wound within this industry, I think the better. I think
Absolutely.
there are so many folks out there that would want to be interested in coffee, but they don't know they want to be interested
True.
yet. They don't.
Yeah.
They just haven't been, like, we haven't held their hand and kind of guided them in yet. Like, you can't go from 0 to 100. You have to meet people where they are. And
Yes. True.
I think figuring out how to do that, especially within competition, is super important.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because it's almost takes us full circle to where we started the conversation about social media. You're a pretty open book. You make yourself accessible through your content to your audience. Mm-hmm. And with how much you've grown, you're very well known. So switching gears a little bit though on the same topic, I'm curious to know how you handle that kind of, how you've been able to manage and handle that, all these eyes on you.
Sure.
Everybody wants, you're clearly making things accessible. You're giving them recipes. You're showing what you're doing behind the stage, behind the scenes. Like, how do you manage all these?
There's a vulnerability to it,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, definitely.
Completely.
I'm assuming that can be sometimes maybe overwhelming, or
Sure.
What's kind of your experience in like managing all that been like?
It's a good question. So I've been doing online content for a while. I think it's been a little bit over 4 years now, which in the online world is like, feels like a decade, kind of. For me, what has allowed me to be to continue doing this as a job without burning out completely has really been creating divides for myself. You know, I try to be as authentic as possible online, like with all my content. Like I'm not putting on like a face and then, you know, like I'm this is me. Like,
Sure.
I really like coffee. I want to share it with you.
I can honestly say I felt that this trip so far.
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Like super humble.
Absolutely.
Just, I would. If I wasn't in coffee and I was some random guy on the street, I would.
I honestly,
super nice
being
girl.
honest and transparent here, I didn't know what to expect because I've seen you and I've, you know.
I try not to be a total diva.
No, you're not. No, you're not. But I haven't been able to really share time or really meet you and, you know, see. I'm like really impressed.
Well, thank you.
In a very, very
100%.
positive way.
Thank
And
you.
I didn't want to set my expectations based on previous experiences I've had with other people. I didn't want to set my expectations so high.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what a disappointment.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Because
Thank you. That
honestly,
means
our
that
industry,
really does mean a lot.
Our industry needs ambassadors, and they need true ambassadors. And we have so many people in our industry that have so much power to really make a difference, but they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's been a tremendous honor to just be with you for less than 20, maybe a little over 20, more than 24 hours, and see that you really care. And you're really humble, and you really want to make a positive impact. It was not just like another reel or just another little content video you're creating. You really mean it. And that's very important, and we need more of that in our industry. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. You're going to make me
For
cry a little bit here.
Well, it's your birthday today as well, so happy birthday.
happy
There's no
birthday.
point in crying, but you know, we're very happy and super honored to have you. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, you know, going back to kind of your question too, I think a lot of it has been maintaining authenticity, like being very real to who I am online allows me to want to share more. I think the thing also too is I've been Gen Z like growing up, like I spent a lot of my time watching a lot of early online creators, and you know, back when like the word influencer like became a thing, it's like I was just a consumer, like watching all those people kind of rise to fame, and during that you see the falls too, and you see the pitfalls of like especially internet fame. I think there's this word that people attach to like kind of famous online people of like celebrity or influencer or whatever, and I've been always very cautious of like those words. I think online content creation nowadays is like a job. It's a very real job, and a lot of people do it. And I think equating that to like celebrity is kind of a dangerous thing, like especially specifically for the content creator's mindset, like being told that like and put in a position of like power as a content creator because of how accessible it is to be a content creator can be a slippery slope. And so I think I've been very conscious of that kind of through my career just because of watching other people's stories. And I also like I treat a lot of my content creation like a job. Like it runs as a business nowadays. Like I'm very structured with it. I'm very kind of thorough with how I create content. And so for me, it's something I love doing. It is a job as well. But having divides for myself of where the content ends, where it begins, who I am in the content, like all of those things have been very instrumental for me being able to do this as long as I have and still maintain a passion for wanting to do it.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
Just going back a little bit, you know, maybe, you know, early in the conversation mentioning that Onyx approached you and you having this opportunity to work with John and Andrea, which to me, they're some of the best in the
It was
game.
mind blowing. I was like so nervous and shaking and being like, hello, nice to meet you.
These guys, honestly, as smart, as intelligent, and meaningful, purposeful in everything that they do. And I have had the privilege of traveling with both of them in the past. They know their stuff. Like, they really know it. And they do such an incredible job. But I think also what they have done really well throughout the years is mentorship.
Yeah.
And really mentoring a lot of people to do really well in their careers. what was like, first of all, how important do you think it is mentorship?
Yeah.
And what was like having the mentorship of Andrea and John in your career so far?
I think mentorship is super important. Like going back to like what I said earlier, for like new baristas, it's like you're never going to be the smartest person in the room, nor should you be. And seeking out people who are smarter than you and coming to them from a perspective of wanting to learn and aspire towards that, I think is super important. If you can find someone that will help enable that for you, like that's incredible. It's rare, but it's incredible.
Yes.
You know, my first experiences really with like John and Andrea were in that 2022 season of competition, and it was very truncated. Like I had a lab that I was training in Portland, Oregon, but of course they're in Arkansas, and so I had, prior to the competition in Boston, I had one, like, I think it was like a long weekend. It was like 3 days that I went out to Arkansas and did training with them, and that was like it. So we packed it in. And that was my first time really like working with them in person. And I just remember like coming in there, being super nervous, not knowing what to expect, I mean, I was like a little baby barista, to like kind of like my coffee idols. And I remember just being like taken care of is probably the best word that I can use. Like, both of them are very compassionate people, which is, you know, that's a huge component of helping people learn. But they also know, you know, when is the right moment to push too, of like, especially in like my scripting. Like I had written a script, and in my brain I was like, this is perfect, like it's done. Like I made the wrongful assumption that I knew what I was doing. And I remember like Andrea coming in to help me kind of with some revisions, and really all she asked me like was why. Like for basically every point I made in my script, she was like, why did you write that? Or why are you saying that the way you're saying that? And that was just, it was the right question. Like she just knew.
Thought-provoking, like just asking,
it was just enough to kind of get the cogs turning, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't her implementing her vision. It was just why. Expand on that.
In a sense, reconfirming what you...
And so it was, you know, it was really cool to learn like her way of coaching through that, because it's the right balance of helping and pushing without taking over. Like it was, you know, it was just kind of incredible to experience that for kind of the first time from a coach.
That's super cool. That's super cool. If I was a barista and I'm getting a phone call from John and Andrea saying, "Hey, I didn't come over here, but let's work together," I'm like, you think you know what I'm gonna do? I'm saying, I'm gonna do like you did. I'm gonna be like freaking out first, and then I'm definitely gonna find a way to rub shoulders with them.
I feel like I always like embarrass her when I always tell the story, but the very first time, so I'd watched competitions for years before competing, like on YouTube and stuff. My very first year at Nationals in, I think it was Kansas City. I want to say like 2019. So Kansas City 2019. I was backstage. I had just found out that I wasn't going through to like semis or whatever. And I was packing up all my bags, and then like Andrea's like over at her table, like getting her stuff ready for the next day. And I was like, I have to say something. I was like, I just need to, like, I'm about to leave. I just need to say something. And so I like kind of run over. She's like got like both River and Abishai are like around her and stuff. And I kind of run up as like, we've never met before. And I was like, hi, you're really cool. I love all your routines. Like, it's really nice to meet you. And then I like ran away. And that was our very first interaction.
Like, what just happened?
Yeah, basically. And you know, it was very cool then later on to be like, it's like getting to work with her. You know, that was a very cool full circle.
No, so many beautiful stories, and it was like really an honor to listen to all of them and learn kind of about your journey and experience. So we appreciate you spending the time with us here and telling us more about
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We could continue on this conversation, but I think people won't.
That'll be episode 2.
We can do that.
We've
been talking about like coming back.
Yeah, we'll do a full circle.
Revisit everyone again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then do a part 2, because every single one of the conversations we have had so far and the recordings that we have done has been like an incredible pleasure and so smart and so helpful. That we are definitely considering perhaps a part 2 with a bunch of other.
We started with this little idea, and all of a sudden it's like,
right, exactly right. So, thank you so much to spend this time with us here. Thank you so much to be in Brazil. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and super happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you.
I know you're far from home. And you're here with us.
There's no better place to have a birthday.
I hope we can make up for
Absolutely.
bringing you to Brazil, and again. Thank you so much, Morgan, for being here and for all you do for the industry. And yes, super stoked to have you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.